Hey everyone, welcome to the Higher Alignment Podcast. I'm your host, Minh-Thu, and I'm an executive coach focused on helping people heal their burnout and reconnect to their purpose through self-mastery. I'm a recovering perfectionist and control freak who spent too many years living overwhelmed and exhausted. Now I show executives how to identify their blind spots and use this to propel them on their journey to finding more fulfillment and freedom without burning out. If you've been feeling lost and disconnected in life, book a complimentary connection call to discuss how we can get you back on the path of self-mastery and living a life that feels successful on your terms. Go to higheralignmentconsulting.com/program to book your call, and we'll see you on the other side. Okay, if you have ever considered leaving your job, this episode is for you, okay? I want to talk today about the point that I had gotten to in my career and that I know a lot of my clients who usually they come to me at this point are dealing with. And usually what that looks like is, you've been at a career for quite a while, whether it's with the same company or in the same role, maybe in the same industry for a while. You've climbed your way to a certain position, you've proven to yourself that you can do it, but you're at this point where you're burnt out. You don't feel any fulfillment with what you're doing. You have to default to autopilot to get through your days, and you're getting the itch. And that itch can show up in many ways for people. But I know for me, what it was the itch to leave my career. Now, ultimately, I did end up leaving my career. However, I want to give you a reframe before you decide to do that, okay? Because in hindsight, I think it was the right move for me to leave, and it's ultimately led me to this point where I get to connect with all you beautiful people. But I don't think that's the answer for everyone, okay? But I know a lot of people consider it. And we're going to talk about it in context of leaving a career or a job today, but this is applicable to relationships, moving, anything that's changing your external environment. Okay. Now, again, let's start with what you're probably feeling right now, because this is what I was feeling. Again, I had been 9 years into my career, 8, I guess, at this point. I had climbed my way into a management position. I was making the most money I had ever made in my entire career and life, period. And, I had a really good setup. Like, it's not an easy industry that I came from. It's an industry that is kind of known for chewing people up and spitting them out, unfortunately. But I had created a really unique career where I started in one place and ended in the same place, which is unheard of. I started in the luxury world, which is also unheard of in auto. And again, one of few females. And that's not to toot my horn, but that's just to say that it was unprecedented, the type. Did I say that right? Unprecedented? You guys know what I mean. It was a really unique career I had for being in auto, okay? And again, I had gotten to the point where I was really good at my job, okay? I could do it like the back of my hand. And it is an industry where you're constantly learning and adapting, which I appreciated about it. But I would say, pretty good. I'd put in my hours. I was really efficient and knew how to produce and could do it probably with my eyes closed. And I was dreading my days. I was unfulfilled. I felt like I had no purpose there. Like, it was like, how fast can I get out of here each day? Like, counting down the hours to leave. And, in hindsight, that wasn't great for me in the relationship, but that also wasn't great for the company in the relationship. You know what I mean? Like, a business also wants to have people who want to be there. And I knew I was valuable to the company. But the energy between us wasn't great. And so I got to a point where I did decide that it was time to move on and do something different. Now, before I left, though, I decided a year in advance, and I was going to give myself a year before I gave my notice. So I decided New Year's of 2022, so going in to 2022, and I resigned March of 2023. Okay. And I gave them my notice in January of 2023. So a whole year. Okay. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to really make sure that it was the right decision for me. I also wanted to set myself up financially because I had no idea what I was going to do next. I had no plan. Okay. And I wanted to make sure that whatever I decided to do next, I didn't have to go back to strictly for finances. I didn't want to be in the same position where I had golden handcuffs on or I needed to work somewhere strictly for money. Um, and the other reason I wanted to give myself a year was that 2022 was actually a really great year for us. And 20 2022, 2021 actually was a great year for us, even with the uncertainty of the world. We were one of the few industries that um, had sustained and actually done quite well during that time. And so, knowing that I was coming off a great year, I wanted to give myself one more year to stay in that same state, meaning I didn't want to leave that place in the gutter. So, if you've ever heard the saying, don't make decisions in the valley, right? It's pretty much saying like, you don't want to make permanent decisions when you're in a state of distress, when your nervous system's dysregulated, when you're not thinking straight and everything's kind of surrounded by doom and gloom and fear. So I wanted to give myself that year and leave on a high note if that's ultimately what I decided to still do once the year was up. Like I wanted to know I left on a high note. And so it was the right decision for me to leave, but I don't think that's necessarily the right decision for everyone. And I want to dissect that a little bit today because, again, as I just said, so many of us, we get into these valley points where, again, you're run down, you're tired, you're just trying to get through your days. You have a lot of great things going on. Again, a great career, maybe great friends, family, you're relatively healthy, but you're still like, is this it? Like, is there not more to life? And so you get this itch and you feel like you got to find a way to scratch it, And again, for some people, that's moving to another country. That might be a relationship change, or that may be the job. But the more I work with people and when we start to tackle their burnout, again, I always talk about how the root cause of burnout is not too many things on your plate. It's not the external factors. The root cause of your burnout is the fact that you're not in alignment with those things, or your alignment to your approach to those things is out of whack. That's what's disconnected. Okay. And in my journey of working with my clients, usually within about they come to me ready to quit their job or pick up and leave. And then within about a month to 6 weeks, they already see how their energy has shifted at their environment because we're shifting what's going on within. Okay. And so if I go back to my own journey and what I see within a lot of my clients is the first thing that's typically draining you in that environment is that, especially if you're an executive or a professional or you're the business owner yourself, you obviously have a tenacity and a drive for success, right? You are an overachiever, you probably are a type A, you probably have some perfectionism in you. I haven't met too many people in those positions who don't. And so you come from this place of always wanting to produce or feeling the need to produce, okay? And it's this energy of having to always be on point, always having to have the answers, being the go-to for everybody. And yes, the higher up in a company you typically are is because that you can solve a higher degree of problems than anyone else in the business. So you're in that position for a reason, and that's obviously commendable. You have a high skill set and probably a high level of accountability and responsibility, which is great. However, what that persona typically brings is also a misunderstanding of self, meaning you probably haven't had the time to focus on yourself in a long time, if ever. And that has been your survival strategy, is to be able to produce results for the external world, whether that be a company or a partner in a relationship or for your family even, right? Like you have based essentially your value in the marketplace on what you can produce for everyone else. And you're probably saying, well, duh, Minh-Thu, that's that's the business world. That's how it works, right? But where this gets challenging and why this ultimately pushes you to a point of feeling like you need to switch careers or jobs or industries is because that drive to do these things is not actually coming from within you. It's coming from an exterior motive. And when anything comes from the outside, it's never lasting. And it's not lasting because it's not within us. It's not within our control. It's not within our soul. It's an external source. And with anything is external, it's never permanent, right? With anything, you can get fired, people can pass away, industries can collapse, businesses can go under, which are all things out of our control. So when we put our value and we look for external things to help us make decisions with how we're moving in our life, that's where it gets really tricky and sticky. And when you're on that path, the more you do it, the more you pour your energy into something that's not actually in alignment with your soul and what drives you from an intrinsic place, the more it actually deteriorates at your self-worth. And of course, when that starts to deteriorate, your ability to connect with yourself, your ability to connect with your team, your environment, your work, the purpose you had at your work, it disintegrates. And I hear from a lot of people, a lot of my clients, and even myself, that when they first started in their industry, they're like, I was hungry, I was a go-getter, I was so excited to make things happen. And now when I wake up, I just can't wait to get out of there. Like I try to do the bare minimum just to get through my day. And they don't want to admit that, of course, because they're obviously in higher positions, but they do just what they can to keep the boat floating. But that drive for more and to grow and to evolve, it's gone, right? And again, it's because when I started, it wasn't necessarily coming from a place of, is this in alignment with me as a person? It was coming from, well, this seems like a good job. They're going to pay me good money. Okay, I'll try it. And then you kind of feed into the environment around you, but it's all coming from the external. And, I'm probably saying this to you and you're like, well, okay, cool, Minh-Thu. It's from the external. I kind of get what you're saying, but what if I don't even know internally what I want or what makes me happy? And that's why I feel like I need to step away from my job, or I need to move, or I need to leave the relationship to figure out those things. Again, that might end up being the right move for you. But what I would say is, before you go pulling the plug and making a pretty drastic decision, I would encourage you to just first start taking the time to get to know yourself, right? Because if you don't take that, if you don't take the time to get to know yourself and really figure out what drives and motivates you as a human for yourself, not based on what society tells you, what resonates in your heart. If you don't know that, it does not matter where you'll end up, this same pattern will come up. Maybe it'll be a temporary fix. Maybe you'll feel good for another year in another company, or another 2 years, or even 5 years. But eventually that itch is going to come back, because what we've done is we've just changed the external environment. We haven't changed actually what's going on within, right? It's the same thing. Like, I was listening to an interview earlier today, and they were talking about how, like, on these like weight loss shows, like, remember The Biggest Loser, and there'd be these people losing like 100 pounds, 150 pounds. And supposedly after people leave that show, within 3 to 5 months, all the weight is put back on. And why is that? Is because they actually haven't dealt with the root cause of why they were in that position in the first place. So internally, what was going on within them to manifest having all this weight within their body, the protection mechanisms, the fear, whatever it was that caused them to manifest this this unhealthy body. Well, they didn't get to the root of that on the show. They gave them the external tools to do it. But when it comes to actually keeping that off, that wasn't tended to. Okay, guys, I hope you've been enjoying this episode. However, if you've been feeling exhausted and overwhelmed with your day-to-day life and you're not sure whether you're actually burnt out or not, go take my free quiz called Is My Burnout Fixable? It's only going to take you 1 to 2 minutes, but it will give you an assessment on what level of burnout you're currently experiencing and also provide some tips you can start to implement right away to help improve your current state. So go to higheralignmentconsulting.scoreapp.com to take the quiz and then DM me or tag me with your results. All right, guys, let's get back to the episode. So how do we start to look at what's actually out of alignment with you? Like, where do you start, right? Well, the first place I would say is you need to process what is truly your desired state in life, okay? And you got to get really clear on this because I think people have an idea like a common term is like the dream life, right? Like, what does your dream life look like? And even, I will use that term sometimes, but dream has this element of something that's kind of like in the far off distance. And I want you to know that anything I talk about is all attainable. And I love people that think big and want big changes for their life. I'm down with it because I've seen it happen. It's happened for me. Like, my life today is completely different than it was, a couple years ago. So I believe in that, but I also believe in how do we practically get to that point. Okay. And so with my clients, where I always start them is I say, okay, so what is your desired state? And so I get them to paint a picture of what their dream life would look like. What's a day in that life look like? And they might be like, well, I live on an acreage and, I only have to work 4 or 5 hours today or a day, and I can travel and still work. And, my kids are, maybe they are homeschooled or in a private school or whatever the case is. They give me all these different, kind of vision board ideas. And then once we paint that picture, what I get them to do is I say, okay, so now if you had all these things, how would you feel? Right? How would you feel by being able to live on an acreage and grow your own food? How would you feel by being able to work from anywhere in the world and all you need is your laptop? Like, what feeling would that bring up? And it's different for everybody, but most commonly what comes up is free. I'd feel free. I could work from anywhere in the world. I could work from my acreage out in the mountains. Like, I would feel free. And I'll be honest, with everyone's visions, what it always comes down to as humans that we typically want more of is we just want more freedom and more love. And that comes in different packages for everybody, but that's all typically what we're optimizing for. And so first we need to figure out what that is for you, okay? And then once you know what that is, I mean the desired state, okay? So we paint the picture, then we get the desired state, which let's say in this case is freedom. What we need to process or what we need to collect data on is how much of your day actually has elements of freedom in it right now. Okay. And so if you go through your day, meaning where from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, how many moments of freedom are you getting in a day? Okay. And so it's not freedom from what the picture you painted for me. It's freedom from that feeling. Like, if you just closed your eyes right now and you could tap into the last time you felt free, whatever that was. Maybe that was on a trip. Maybe you're in the middle of Italy without your phone. Maybe you were in the mountains with your kids and in this log cabin and it was beautiful. Maybe it was just you by yourself in your bedroom, no distractions, whatever that is. Like, just feel into what freedom felt like for you in that moment. And then I want you to ask yourself, how many times a day am I feeling this? And for most people, it's slim to none. It's like, well, barely at all. Okay, so then if you're not really feeling freedom throughout your day, we need to figure out how to bring more elements of that feeling into your day. That needs to become what we're optimizing for. And because One thing I like to point out again with my executives and business owners, et cetera, is that y- you've typically gotten to that place because you have exuded a certain level of control. Okay, let's just be honest. Let's call it what it is. I know for me, again, being a perfectionist type, I had to be in control of so much. Okay, and so I know I felt like at my last job, and not even just my last job, my life, that if I didn't do something, then I had very little confidence it was going to get done properly at all. Okay, it was this need to know that if I did it and I executed it to the best of my ability, then I could feel quote unquote safe with the outcome. Okay, which really wasn't true at all, because the reason perfectionism is a defense mechanism. That's it. Okay. The reason people go into perfectionist tendencies is because the idea of exposure or something going wrong, quote unquote, that vulnerability feels like too much. And the potential of doing something quote unquote wrong or not great, the pressure of that happening is too much. Therefore, we just take control of everything and try to do everything ourselves, which is what leads to burnout and feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and anxious, because of course we're humans. A, we can never be perfect, and B, we can only tolerate so much, right? So if you experience that and you experience the need to be in control all the time, well, control and freedom do not go hand in hand. They are very opposite ends of the spectrum. And so, like I say all the time, like the life I live today, the version of Minh-Thu 2 years ago wouldn't have been able to handle it, because she was still very much in control mode. There was I 2 years ago, I was probably having moments of freedom definitely coming in. I was feeling that to an extent, but the amount of freedom I have now, she would have had a meltdown, because it was out of her nervous system's capacity. She didn't know what that level of letting go was like. Okay. But again, if we're trying to figure out for you right now, with the career in the relationship you're in, whatever, how we can bring that into your day more, I would encourage you to first ask, like, well, where are you not even letting it in? Where are you needing to be in control all the time? And that's a really good place to start to see how we can introduce more freedom into your day. And for some of you, that might be you answer your emails at all hours of the night because you just want to get ahead of it before tomorrow. For some of you, that might be, I have one client, he owns a couple businesses, and he will still do things that the owner shouldn't be doing. And I appreciate his integrity as far as, he wants to be a guy that can just pick up and get things done. But, he's doing deliveries and things that, quite frankly, are not a high return on investment of his time, right? But from his standpoint, he's like, well, who else is going to do it? Will it ever get done? So I'm just going to take control and I'm going to do it myself. And for, in our journey together, it's been having to let go of that and trust that it will get done. But ultimately, for the sake of his businesses and his peace of mind and his energy, we need to be much more strategic and intentional with where he is putting his time and effort, right? So for some of you, it might be letting go of some tasks, maybe delegating more. It might be, you know, um, letting your spouse have the final word. Or not feeling like you have to prove that you're right all the time. Like, control can look different for everybody. But, if you're optimizing for more freedom per se, it's like, well, we have to see where we can even make space for the freedom to come in. And typically that means by letting go of some things. Okay. Now, I do want to say it's not always easy to just let go of things, because the reason you show up the way you do in your job, your relationships, etc., for all of us, is because we learned this strategy from when we were children, right? It's a survival strategy. So essentially, as kids, in very basic terms, when we come into this world, we essentially make this agreement with our caregivers that, like, we will form to the like we will become the child that you want to an extent, in return for love and protection. Like that's kind of the agreement. You know what I mean? Which isn't bad because as children we aren't able to self-regulate. We aren't able to take care of ourselves yet. So based on our caregivers and whatever their expectations are of their kids or however they can provide love and protection, we adapt our behaviors based on how we can receive that from them. Okay? And again, that makes a ton of sense and we all do it. But what happens is along the way, we adopt this survival strategy and we translate it as adults into our personal relationships, into our business relationships. And really it's not the same. Like the relationship I have with my boyfriend is not the relationship I have with my mom, but yet in if I'm operating from the subconscious level, the survival strategy I learned with my mom is a survival strategy I have now applied to my boyfriend. Okay. Now this is what we do if we haven't done the work or we haven't learned some things. And so again, for a lot of us, if we're going back to the work analogy, is we operate from a standpoint of knowing that we have to behave a certain way in order to get a certain outcome or at work. And the truth is a lot of us would have gotten results from this behaviors. I did. Like I was making a great income. I got promoted from this survival strategy. So the trickery in it all was that I was getting quote unquote results. But beneath the surface, I was running myself to the ground and I couldn't figure out why or why I wasn't feeling the fulfillment I thought I would by hitting these targets and earning this big paycheck and getting this promotion. Like, why wasn't that feeding me? Why once I hit it, it was like, okay, what now? Right. And again, because it wasn't coming from a place within me. So again, once you know your desired state, how do we incorporate that into your day more? And we do that by letting go of things. And I say this to say that when you start to have this awareness of how your survival strategy is most of the time not conducive to actually what you want out of life, it's a very big aha moment because you start to see that the software and programming that you're running essentially, because that's what your survival strategy is. Like everything we learned as kids is a set of programs. And so that program, when you punch it in, gives you a certain outcome. Okay. But that program might not be conducive to the outcome that you're actually seeking at this point in your life. And again, I think we've all heard the term, what gets you to one point, or what gets you to this point in life won't be enough to get you to the next point. Okay. And so if we understand that it's just a set of programs we're running, then that means we also have the ability to reprogram and recode that software. So if you think about, I'm not a tech person, but let's say you get someone to design a website for you, okay? And you want the website to be purple and orange. Okay, well the coder is going to put in whatever type of coding to produce a website that is predominantly orange and purple. I think that's what I said, orange and purple, okay? Now, let's say all of a sudden you're like, I changed my mind. I actually want a website that's yellow and blue. Okay, so the developer goes in and puts in a new set of coding that now gives you a website that is yellow and blue. Okay? It's just rewriting the programming. It's just giving you a new software. And so once you have the awareness that what you actually desire, that desired state, that freedom state that you're looking for, and the way you're showing up, your survival strategy isn't conducive, now we're getting somewhere, okay? Because now we're starting to identify the disconnect and misalignment that's within you, which is essentially the root cause of your burnout. And when we start to tackle it from this point, now we can actually, we don't have to fix the exterior just yet. We might still want to at the end of it, but we don't have to worry about making that big decision yet because now we're actually getting somewhere, okay? And at this point, once you're able to identify the difference between how you're showing up and what you desire, this is where I encourage people to start using curiosity versus control, okay? And it's so, so important because again, the coding that you've been running has been from a very controlled place. But if we think about the energy of curiosity, what that's giving you is a more playful and lighter energy to be to collect data on why you are showing up the way you're showing up. Okay. And so, if you look at kids, for instance, like children have so much curiosity, and we would have all had that at one point too, right? When we come into this world, we don't have these heavy thoughts and stories and patterns that we now have as adults, where we're over processing and over analyzing and caring what people think. Outside of our parents, we just existed and we got up and we played, and it's so easy to pick up a Barbie and make her say whatever she wants to play house, or pick up a stick and pretend it's a gun, and you're not thinking what kind of gun and what does it look like. It's just a gun, and we're just playing cops and robbers, or whatever kids are playing these days. Like, there was a level of imagination and curiosity, and therefore things were a lot lighter. And so once you get to this point of realizing, okay, there is disconnect within me, I desire freedom, but I'm living from a place of control. Now is when you want to start asking questions. Now, when you ask yourself questions and you get curious about yourself, the one thing I will add is it's important to not have an element of judgment here. And it is so subtle sometimes how easy that voice comes in. I know some people, I ask them what that voice is like inside their head, and they say right away, oh, judgmental, like so hard on myself, like no doubt about it. And then I have some clients, they're like, no, she's pretty nice, but then she tells me I should do this and I should do that and I should do like I haven't really met anyone yet who doesn't have a natural tone of judgment in their head when they haven't started doing this work. Okay. And so when you're getting curious about yourself and you're asking, well, why do I feel like I need to answer emails past 7 o'clock at night? That's late. But why do I feel like I need to work till 9 o'clock at night? Why do I feel like I need to put in extra hours on the weekend? Like, where is that coming from? And you want to ask that question with no judgment, and you want to have no judgment to whatever the answer is. Because for some of us, like I know for me, when I was like answering my emails on vacation and answering emails at all hours of the day, whether I was at work or not, it was because I was scared. I was scared that if I didn't show up in a certain way, the company wouldn't see value in me and I'd lose my job. I wouldn't make as much money. I was scared. I didn't think that I didn't know my inherent worth. I thought my self-worth, honestly, it's not I thought, my self-worth was really low. And I was so good at hiding it from myself. I've said this multiple times. But so then because of that, internally, I felt like I had to overproduce and overachieve in order to sustain this position I had earned. And that all really came from my childhood. I came like as a child, I always felt like I needed to overperform and overachieve as well too. And that's not anyone's fault. That's just the story that my subconscious made up based on circumstances of my life, and that's the evidence it found. And so that was my survival strategy. And so now again, I carried that into adulthood. But when I got to the point in my career where I was like, okay, I can't keep going on like this. And again, it was starting to be a question of should I leave or should I stay? That's where I started. I started with, what am I optimizing for? Okay, I'm optimizing for to feel more free, to feel lighter, to feel just more connected with my environment and the people around me. And so then I started to get curious. Okay, so how are you currently showing up, Minh-Thu? Like, is there freedom within you? Because if you think you're going to leave your job to find more freedom, well, that's probably not going to be lasting. So if that's truly what you want, the true practice of manifestation is not to go out and make things happen. The true practice of manifestation is to embody something and to match that frequency so that whatever's within will inevitably manifest on the outside without you even trying, just because you're embodying it. So again, if I want freedom, am I free within me? And I wasn't. I wasn't free. I was in this prison of not feeling like I was enough. I was in this prison of feeling like I had to over everything, over control, overthink, overachieve in order to make my worth in the marketplace a reality. For me, I was over masculine as well. I was heavy in my masculine, and that was, I did work in a very masculine environment. I was one of two females out of like 14 people. And even that, like the last 3 years of my career, when I was aware of that, I really started to shift into my feminine more. And to be honest, I think that made me stand out more. Because I was coming into more alignment with myself. And so therefore my natural frequency was getting stronger and brighter, but it allowed me to hold space for people in a different way. So when I started to embrace my femininity more in the workplace, in my life in general, but in the workplace as well, I think it actually gave me a competitive edge because I was able to hold space for for people in a different way. My light was brighter. I think it actually added more value to me by embracing that side of me, And this was something I was only able to start reconciling when I was really getting, again, curious about why am I this way? And so what I would say through all of this is like, if you're at that point of thinking, should I leave? Should I go? Like, don't get me wrong, you can. If you just want to pick up and move countries and go to a beach, you can do that. If you just want to pick up and like switch careers altogether just to shake things up, you absolutely can do that. All I'm saying is that until you fix the root cause of whatever got you to that point, it's going to show up again. I've seen it time and time again with multiple people. It's just part of the human experience and it's part of the universe. Like we all came here to learn lessons, and the only lasting change ever comes from within. So before you make that decision to jump, before you decide to pick up and change everything, give yourself time to get to know yourself first and ask yourself these questions. Get curious about yourself. Don't spend all your time. I mean, you can, but I wouldn't go spending all your time researching another industry and how that's going to be better for you. The best investment you can make at this point to make the most grounded and lasting change for yourself. Like, because if you're going to make a change, then let's make sure we make the change in the right department, right? Like, let's make sure we invest that time and energy in something that's going to give you the highest return on investment. So instead of spending all your time researching another industry, another company to work for, courting someone else before we do any of that, living in another city, researching Mexico, Puerto Rico, whatever, Costa Rica, it seems like everyone's going there. Before we do all that, let's take the time to research you. Okay, let's get to know you. Let's get to know what got you to this point. What makes you tick? What's your survival strategy? What's the state of your nervous system? How you respond to stress? What makes you feel alive? What makes you feel loved? What makes you feel connected? Like, let's invest in that first. And I promise you, if you do that, if you put some real time into that, and that's not just 6 months, guys, like this is an ongoing research project, right? Like it never really starts. But if you think about all the time and energy you've given to this career or this relationship or whatever, all this output you've given, okay? Can we take just a fraction of that, a fraction of it, and start pouring it back into you and making you the topic of discussion, making you what we're researching? Like, again, I was at my last career for a total of 9 years. I decided a year before I was going to leave, so at year 8. But I had started this journey of kind of figuring out what was going on and healing my burnout, I would say about 3 years before I left. So about 6 years. And it didn't take me 6 years, or it didn't take me 3 years to heal everything. That's not what I'm saying. But that's where I started to ask some questions. I was still living in my programming for quite a while. But when I really started to get heavy into it and be like, okay, we're gonna do something was that last year. Okay. And so you've heard it time and time again. The best investment you can ever make is into yourself. And if you want to live a life that is free, that feels loving and feels purposeful and allows you to be present and connect with the people and your environment around you in a way that feels fulfilling, we need to know you best. The relationship with yourself needs to be the relationship with yourself is the most valuable asset you will ever have. I promise you. Because when you know that in and out, then whatever path you decide to take, you're always going to find your way. It doesn't matter what the exterior is. And I think sometimes too, that can be the challenging part of this, is because we think, oh my God, do I want to leave this job? Do I want to leave this relationship? Like, is that the right move for me? Is it not? And it's this constant dance. But when you really know you and you really take the time to really filter through, I'm sorry, the bullshit that's within us, because we all have it. We all have an ego. We all have a subconscious mind that tells us a bunch of crap. Like, it's not real. Your thoughts aren't real. They're just screens on a projector that play, and that if we don't have the awareness to detach from those thoughts, we think it's us. We think that we're not worthy. We think that evidence of the past dictates our future. Like, it's so easy to get stuck or to get sucked into those stories. Okay. And so until we start to like really make way and shift through those things, it is hard to trust our next move. It is hard to trust our next decision because we don't know the place that we're making that decision from. But I promise you, with everything in my being, because I've done it, I've helped people through it, that if you make the relationship with yourself the number one project in your life, and you continuously collect data and get curious and have compassion for yourself through this process, and you start to really understand what drives you and what you're here to learn and what you want out of life, that freedom, that love, then again, it doesn't matter what you do. It's always going to work out. The universe is always going to have your back, and it will regardless. But you can feel more sound and more trusting in who you are. And when you do this, this is when your energy starts to replenish. This is when the weight starts to melt off you. This is when you feel like, oh, the power is back within me. Because as long as we think it's the job or the relationship or anything outside of us, we never really hold the power. Those external things that we think are making us happy or not making us happy, we're giving our power away to those things. But when we can take full accountability and responsibility in a compassionate, loving way, this is when we access our true potential. This is when we step into our power. And this is where you can really start to create the life that you desire. It's possible, I'm telling you. And it's my wish for everybody, is that you can finally pour the love and attention that you so deserve into yourself, that you can get to this point that you know that you can co-create with the universe whatever you desire, and that life doesn't have to be this constant dance of suffering, that we can feel lighter, we can feel present, and we don't even necessarily have to change the external, because once we change what's within us, the law of manifestation, when we embody what we're truly desiring, or when we embody what we're shifting and moving towards, the exterior will automatically shift. That's how it always works for every single one of us. It's the laws of the universe. So embody yourself, get to know yourself, and watch everything around you naturally start to shift. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Higher Alignment Podcast. If you got something out of this episode, I would ask that you please go leave this podcast a 5-star review so that it can find its way to other people who are needing support at this time. My mission in life is to help executives realize that we don't need to suffer in silence while still performing at a high level. I want to help free people of the heavy pressure they carry on a day-to-day basis, and having more people listen to this podcast will do just that. So wherever you listen to this podcast, please go leave it a 5-star review, and we'll see you in the next episode.